thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Parent and Caregiver Voices Project. This podcast and video series features parents and caregivers with lived experience taking care of children with medical, developmental, and behavioral conditions. Each episode also features an interviewer who is an expert in caregiver well-being. Today we will hear from Matt, whose daughter was treated for AML, a type of leukemia that occurs less often in children than adults. Dr. Dana Bakula, a pediatric psychologist at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City and co-chair of the Caregiver Wellbeing Special Interest Group of the Society of Pediatric Psychology, will be interviewing Matt today about his experience as the father of a child with special healthcare needs. He reflects on his unique experiences as a male caregiver from the time of his child's cancer diagnosis, during an extended hospitalization in another state, and beyond.
Hello, my name is Dana Bakula, and I am a pediatric psychologist at Children's Mercy Kansas City. I work with children with medical conditions and their parents to help improve their quality of life. Today, we have Matt, who is a father of a child with a medical condition, who's agreed to join us, which we're so excited about. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your child's health condition?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dana. So my name is Matt Phillips. I am a financial consultant for a brokerage company here locally. I live in Richmond, Virginia. When my daughter was 18 months old, she was acting kind of off and different from what her normal activities were. And she seemed very tired and non-mobile to some degree. And so basically, my wife was very persistent about going to different doctors, and we went to multiple emergency rooms trying to seek some sort of an answer, because this being our second child, we knew what children behave like at 18 months old, and we knew that something was off. And she was very much an advocate for making sure that her needs were met and that her voice was heard, that something was wrong with our child. We quickly learned after our third emergency room trip that we weren't crazy, and that our daughter had AML, a rare form of leukemia, rare for children especially, but a very aggressive form of leukemia where it was generated in her bone marrow and then attacking her central nervous system and different organs within her body, and really just causing her to be extremely tired and lethargic. And so we spent a couple weeks at our local hospital here in Richmond, and then we quickly figured out that every treatment that we were trying was coming up unsuccessful, unfortunately. So our fear grew pretty rapidly, and we were fortunate to have a connection to St. Jude Children's Hospital. And within about 2 days of talking to St. Jude Children's Hospital, we flew out to Memphis, Tennessee to seek really just kind of emergency care to try to get this disease under control. And within a couple weeks, they had drastically reduced the amount of leukemia blasts within her bloodstream and within her central nervous system, within her spinal fluid, ultimately leading to curing her from AML leukemia. And fortunately, her older brother, was her bone marrow donor and essentially saved her life. So we were very blessed that he was a perfect match. They were the same blood type, and so it was a bit of a process moving from the East Coast to the center of the country and finding different ways to support our family and maintain some sort of a normal livelihood. But ultimately, the end story was they cured her. She has not had any reoccurrence of cancer. It's been about 8 years now. So this was 2014 that she was originally diagnosed. So she is a 9-year-old fourth grader, or upcoming fourth grader, and she's just vibrant and healthy and happy. And so that's the main things, and we couldn't really ask for anything more beyond that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear how she's doing now. I'm very excited to hear that.
Thank you.
And what a testament to your wife for noticing those signs so quickly and being so adamant and both of you getting her the care she needed. It's really
absolutely
wonderful.
Yeah, we there were times where I was, as a father, I'm at work, 8, 9 hours a day. So I don't see the normal behavior. I only see her at night when she's tired or on the weekends. And so my ability to really recognize and have that kind of, in her case, maternal instinct that something was wrong wasn't as present or wasn't as outstanding as hers was. And so having that trust in my partner and in my wife to know that, hey, something is not right, even when our pediatrician and ER doctors are looking at us like we're crazy. It was truly a blessing, a calling from God on that one.
Wow. Yeah, really, really incredible. And it sounds like it definitely turned your life upside down for quite a while, moving to the middle of the country. How long was she at St. Jude for that round of treatment?
Absolutely. So we arrived in late September, and we spent about 6 months at St. Jude in Memphis. And so between, they supported us with housing and helped us with food, things like that. So never received a medical bill. Obviously, St. Jude is very well known for that part of it. But yeah, we lived in Memphis and was supported by the hospital for about 6 months of our time there.
Yeah. Okay. Such a fascinating story, and I'm excited to talk more about it. Before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about what brings us here today to talk about your experience. So the research on parent and caregiver well-being tells us that mothers and fathers tend to react to having a child with a medical, developmental, or behavioral condition differently. But we also know that most of the research has actually been done on mothers and female caregivers. And we tend to know less about how fathers experience having a child with a medical condition like cancer. And we see that a lot of resources are also designed around moms as well. And so really, I'd love to just talk today about your experiences as a father, what might be unique about it, what might not be. And hopefully hearing about that can be helpful to other fathers out there who are listening, or even just for other caregivers to learn about what is unique about being a father of a child with a medical condition. So that's really what I'd love to focus on and talk about today.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Great. So you've talked a little bit about your daughter's medical condition, how you got there, and her experiences, and she's doing well now. But I'm really curious, what was this experience like for you? Did it have an impact on your well-being? Did you notice changes in yourself as a result of going through this journey?
Absolutely. I think if anyone didn't notice changes in who they were and their, emotional capacity, they would probably be lying to you about that. Because, if you love someone and, no matter what their age and they go through a battle with cancer, it is traumatizing if you're close to them. But yeah, so initially up front, the thought process is, hey, this isn't real. This is, I can't even believe that this is happening. And you hear kind of the cliche, oh, this would never happen to me, or I can't believe that it would happen to me, or things like that. And that's 100% true. Like at the beginning, you are in doubt, and it's got to be something else. They read the test wrong, and so, but I mean, it was true. She was sick. And so my well-being, I think at the beginning, really, I was really in a dark place, because it's hard to imagine what your life where your life is going and what it's going to be like in 6 months and a year and 2 years. And really that uncertainty and that lack of control, I think, is hard, especially for a father, in the sense that, growing up and being a man in our society, your main focus is, I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to take control. I'm going to put a roof over their head. I'm going to put food on the table. I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure that that everyone in your family is taken care of, that your kids are well taken care of and fed.
Yeah.
But once you recognize that you don't have that control anymore, and that you don't have the knowledge, like you're not taught anything growing up, one, how to deal with a situation that is that impactful, and you don't really know who to go see and to who to talk to, and then you have, everyone around you hears about it, coworkers, families, friends, and everyone's kind of giving unsolicited advice as to what to do and where to go and who to talk to, and you're overwhelmed with kind of the tsunami of emotion of what's occurring, and then at the same time you're making these life-changing decisions that could either save your child potentially, could damage your child further. How many treatments do you provide? Is this the right, do you participate in the study? Do you not participate? Like there are so many demands on just like who you are as a person that you really get tested to the very limit. And so yeah, your well-being, your patience, your ability to cope with things changes dramatically. And I would say up front, that is a very hard thing to learn to deal with, and to just to work through. But then it's ongoing. It's not like, oh, now your child is healthy, you're going to go back you're going back to what your normal life was, because you never return to that. You're always in a constant state of paranorma, in the sense that you're worried, like, is this a cold? You're paranoid about everything. So you're worried, is this a cold? Is this, is this COVID? How is this going to affect her? And things like that. So you're constantly wondering what the next, what the next dilemma is going to be. And so trying to get your mind out of that psyche, is something bad's going to happen next, or, what's the next shoe to drop, essentially, is a hard thing to try to separate from your normal everyday life.
Yeah.
And it never goes away. Like, I'm always worried. I'm always concerned. What about her heart? What about her liver? What about, her being able to have children? Or, there are major factors in her life that that I'm going to have to contest with and deal with. And then I would say my well-being gets stretched even further, knowing that I'm going to have this conversation with her one day. So it's not even from a mother or a father's perspective. It's not even just the immediate need of hey, this is something that I have to make life-changing decisions on, but this is something that I'm going to have a serious conversation with her about year over year, making sure that the people around me understand why I behave the way I do.
Yeah.
And making sure that she understands that the reason we live an altered life compared to friends or compared to other family members is to continually protect and make sure that, we're giving her every advantage that we can going forward. And that's a hard long-term challenge that weighs heavy, because you don't know if you're making the right decision ever. So you just have to keep praying on it, really, and doing your best for your child.
Yeah. And I mean, right, so much uncertainty throughout this whole process that I hear you talking about, and it doesn't go away, right? Your child may be cancer free, but that doesn't take away the uncertainty that now exists with every symptom or every day, all of these things that now remain in your life.
Absolutely. And I don't know that it'll ever go away. And most parents, I would think most parents probably have that concern to some degree, but it really gets amplified when you don't know, you don't know what the next diagnosis or what the next cough is going to bring. And it really changes your perspective totally.
Yeah, it brings so much more fear of the unknown. And there's actually quite a bit of research that says that one of the biggest predictors of parents' well-being is how uncertain they feel about the future related to their child's medical condition. And it makes sense, right? It's scary to not know.
It is. And yeah, that makes perfect sense, because because if bad news comes out, you fall right back into this place that you were, 8 years ago, that you didn't want to be in to begin with. And then it's almost like you're just constantly in this hamster wheel of
Yeah.
of trauma, and that's hard. It's hard to pull yourself out of, and it's hard to move forward with, knowing that any second you could be right back in that same predicament, um, and living those same fears.
Yeah, and you said something earlier related to that uncertainty that I wanted to come back to, which is right that it changes how you parent, and right, it means you have to have conversations with your daughter and other people around you about the way that you react, the way you parent her. How do
Mhm.
you feel like your position as a father, your relationship to your daughter as a father has changed because of this?
Um, Honestly, I would say that it's improved.
Okay.
So she obviously at 18 months, you don't know what's going on, right?
Mhm.
So, but it makes you value those kind of primary years of your child's life a lot more. Like I read something the other day that you only have 18 summers with them and then they're gone, and not gone like in a terrible sense, but gone,
Yeah.
they're off to college and whatever. Um, but it really made me refocus on, hey, what's more important in my life? Like that realization that I think you have later in life, like, oh, I spent all these years working and providing for my family, but I didn't really get to know them. So that dynamic changed for me, that, hey, I can sit down and I can play Barbies, or I can play LOL dolls, or whatever it is, and we can kind of relish in those moments that, hey, they're young and they're impressionable, and I can be a better person, I can be a better man, going forward, because I know that I realize that time is limited, and whether it's cancer or whether it's a car accident or it's just old age, that time is limited for all of us, but it really, it puts that awareness up in your face, and it's hard to cope with, but it's, if you can take it and spin it to make yourself adapt and say, hey, this is what I need to do, because if something happens tomorrow, I don't want to carry that regret that I walked away from a situation, or I didn't spend that extra 20 minutes playing with my daughter when she wanted to. And um, so it changes how you parent and how you look at your children, and it made me at least want to be a better father than, I don't think I was a bad father before, but makes me want to be better.
Yeah. Well, and I think that experience could have led you to feel unhappy, feel like it wasn't fair, and really have this negative attitude. But instead, you found a way to turn that into, okay, I really need to make these moments count. And I feel really grateful for all the time that I have with my children, which I think is a really powerful way to process and move forward with that experience.
Absolutely. And I will say, I did go through that period of why me? Like, why
Yeah.
is this happening to our family? Like, I think that is, looking back on it, I think it's natural. At the time, like, I was angry. Um, I wanted to live my life and have healthy children and everything be rosy and great. But the reality is it wasn't. And so it's very easy to focus on the negative. But
Absolutely.
one of the things that we did, and we constantly focus. So we use Caring Bridge throughout the process, which, if you don't know about Caring Bridge and you're a parent listening to this, get on there and share your story through Caring Bridge, because having 30, 40, 50 people reach out to you at once is overwhelming in its own right. And it's not, you need to have an advocate speaking on your behalf. And if you can do that through a singular page that's not open to the public,
Yeah.
then go for it. But one of the things that we always did, or I always wrote these journals every night or every couple nights or whatever, to keep family up to date, was I would ask people who were following and praying for our situation to imagine what Piper's going to be like. Piper's my daughter. What Piper's going to be like when she's 18. Envision her graduation. Envision her wedding. Envision her having children. Like, and put out there the images of her as an adult living a fruitful life and getting beyond this. And I think the power of prayer and the power of that just positive thought constantly, and I mean literally every journal I would write, I
Yeah.
would say this. I think that that has an impact of the way that you deal with the situation, but it also it reinforces just that positive momentum that, hey, it's dark out, but there's a light. You're going to go through this rainstorm and there's going to be the sun again. And that is the attitude that we always try to approach the situation with. We weren't like that as much before, and weren't as strong in our conviction around that. But it's, for other families dealing with it, I get the grief, embrace the grief, but put forward the positive energy and the positive imagination as to what it can actually look like in 6 months, in a year, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's such incredible advice, because I agree, the grief is natural and normal and we need it, but we also need a way to move through that grief process to come out to the other side. So I think that's fantastic advice. And I agree with you. Caring Bridge is such a wonderful organization and resource for families. So we will make sure to put the link in the show notes so that people can easily access
Absolutely.
more about Caring Bridge, because it's a great organization. I am so curious, do you feel like your journey going through this as a father differs from other caregivers, like mothers or grandparents or other people who are a primary caregiver? Are there things that are unique about this when you're a father compared to a different type of caregiver?
I think there is. I think the pressures of our society for fathers is different. So we handle what we're supposed to do differently. Like, mothers naturally are caregivers. There are a lot of mothers that are employed, and God bless them, they do a wonderful job. But the pressures of our society, I think, say the man goes to work and brings in the income and things like that. So when you're faced with a situation that your whole family has to pick up and move, and where do you get your income from? I was fortunate in the sense that I have really good benefits with my job, and they actually moved me to Tennessee, and allowed me. Basically, I worked 10 hours a week, and just to really hold on to insurance. I didn't really make a lot of money. It wasn't necessarily the point. It was knowing that in 6 months I'm coming back and I'm going to continue to work. And so they held on to that job for me and made sure that that stress factor was taken care of. So, but that is not the case for, I would say, the majority of families that go through cancer. Like,
Yeah.
you have to pay your bills. You have a mortgage, you have energy, you have utilities that you have to pay for, and that is a stress that I think fathers feel naturally, because that's our responsibility in the household. So I think I felt that much different, because at the time, we were trying to decide, does just as Piper and my wife go to Memphis and try to deal with this? Do we, and I stay here with my son? Do all four of us go? Like, how do you pick up and leave a house for 6 months, empty, vacant,
Yeah.
right? So how do you do that? And that kind of goes back to the making decisions about your house and about a doctor and about a treatment and everything that comes along with it. It's very challenging and stressful, to say the least. And luckily I was able to sit down with my manager and be like, look, I'm leaving. Because my wife said, you're coming with me, and I don't care what happens to the house. And so I was grateful for that, but because it was the right decision to be made. But I didn't know how to make that decision and how to have that, even really how to have that conversation without crying or without keeping a level head, and even knowing if I was keeping a level head or not. So I think for a father, the stress is different in the sense that your responsibilities don't just end because your child has cancer. your responsibilities of feeding the family and taking care of everyone continue. And when we were at the hospital, we came across so many families that it was just a single parent, a married parent, but a single at the hospital, dealing with this crisis by themselves. And I can't imagine how difficult that would be. Even for the father to be at home and not knowing what's going on and not being able to participate and make these big decisions, these life-changing decisions. So yeah, it is absolutely different for a father than it is for a mother. Both extremely difficult, but both in their own capacity is very, very challenging.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, right, that pressure you experience as a man and as a father to do certain things and to fit in a certain box isn't conducive to, right, the pressure that you now feel to do whatever you need to do to meet the needs of your family. And at some point, the two can't be perfect all the time.
They can't be. And yeah, and I'm glad that you have to align yourself with family members and coworkers and people in your life that understand it's the trauma that you're going through, one, but at the same time who are willing to take a risk with you to help secure your job, or help come in and mow your grass when you're gone, or whatever it is, to really help support you and make that decision to say, I'm leaving. I'm leaving my home, and I'm leaving everything that I own to go make sure that my child is okay. That's a hard decision, but knowing that you have people around you and making sure you align yourself, whether it's a new relationship or not, to those people is important for mothers, fathers, any caregiver, ultimately.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you think about what fathers might need going through this journey, what do you think is the most helpful for fathers?
I think that the most helpful thing for fathers is just the realization that your family is your number one. When you put that at the front of the line of the decisions that you have to make and the sacrifices that you have to make, there's always going to be another job. There's always going to be another car, another house, whatever it might be. And I think that's hard for a father, especially because you're putting your pride aside, and you're putting your what you've worked on however long, the past 10 years, 15, 5 years, whatever it might be, all that dedication and time that you've put into your skill, your trade, you have to hang that up and say, hey, what's important to me and my priorities and providing is less compared to my family and what my family needs. And so one, I would say, learn to put it aside. It's not important. And in 5 years, it's not going to be something that you look back on and say, man, I really wish I had stayed home and worked 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week to support my family while my child and my wife were fighting for my daughter's life in the hospital. And I think the second thing to that would be, it's okay to be vulnerable. For probably the first, I'm not a big crier. I'm not a big affectionate show of emotion kind of individual. But for the first probably, 3 weeks, I probably cried every single day. And anytime I tried to talk about it or try to express how I was feeling, I would just lose my mind, and I would just I would just lose it. It's not something you can just wrap your head around and be like, okay, I'm going to inject logic into this situation and make sense of it. Cause for me, and I'm sure like most men, hey, you're upset. Let's try to figure out a solution. Let's implement that solution. And let's add some logic to this because that's what we do. It's just our nature, I guess. And so that all that just kind of goes out the window because none of it makes sense. And so you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You have to allow yourself to talk to people, your coworkers, anyone really that it's just there to listen. And you don't need to turn around and get advice back or anything like that because no one else really knows until they have to experience it themselves. But just unloading that weight and just being able to verbalize and talk about it is therapeutic in and of itself. And you don't really realize it until you do it a couple times and you're like, wow, like that weight has been lifted and it makes you stronger to make the decisions that are tougher to make. And more clear-headed, I would say. You want to go into any situation like that as clear-headed as you can be, I guess. So yeah, my advice would be put your family first. They're number one. You're not going to regret that part of it. And allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to be emotional. It's human. Even if you don't cry, I don't cry a lot. But put yourself out there. No one's going to judge you for it.
Yeah, that's really wonderful advice. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
I'm good.
You've shared so many really wonderful pieces of advice and insight into your experiences, and I'm sure they're going to resonate with lots of other people out there. Are there other things, though, that you feel like are really important to understand about being a father of a child with a medical condition, or other advice that you want to give to anyone who's listening?
So it's kind of along the same vein, but I would say that the main piece of advice is this is not one person's decision to make. This is not, you're not going into this alone. If you're raising a child alone, I can't really speak to that, but if you have a spouse, if you have a significant other, I think you can either fall into each other or you can fall away from each other. And those are unfortunately the two options and the two things that you see with families that have to deal with any sort of crisis. And falling into each other, being the rock for your spouse and allowing your spouse to be the rock for you takes the burden off of carrying all the weight of every decision you're gonna have to make in the next 6 months, 2 years, whatever it might be. Like, don't take that for granted, and don't put your relationship on the back shelf, because you need each other. That is you made that person together. You both love that person with all your heart. You would do anything. You would sacrifice your life for that child, but you're not in it alone. And so whether, if you're single and you have a parent that can be that person for you and can share in that grief and in that excitement of like, hey, these test results came back great. You have to have that other person, and going at it alone is gonna, it's gonna hurt you more in the long run than it will help you. So don't fight your partner. Understand that, if they lash out, if they're angry, if they're scared, that those emotions are not directed at you as an individual or as a person. They're directed at the situation, and there's no normal way to get that out other than expressing it. And if it comes across, don't take it personal. Like, absorb it, let it go, and then step forward, because that's the only way you're really going to get through an event like this. So yeah, I think that would be strengthen your relationship with your partner to every capacity that you can.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I agree, it applies to people, even if you're not married or in a relationship with the other parent of your child. Finding someone who is your person and can be your support is such a critical part of this process, because it is so hard to go at this completely alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't go at it alone, or you're gonna die at 40 of a heart attack yourself, and that's no good for your children.
Yes, yeah, which again, we have to learn, how to take care of ourselves when we go through really difficult things. And caregiver well-being is such an important topic, because in order for you to be there for your child, you have to find ways to take care of yourself and sleep and eat and get emotional support, tangible support. It's just such an important part of this process of being a parent.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly. You have to, and I think you're right to the point of, you have to take care of yourself, because if you're not in, I mean, maybe not peak condition, but if you're not in condition enough mentally or spiritually, to kind of go down this journey and go down this path, it's going to be a lot harder. And finding your peace with God or whoever you worship, or your relationship with your spouse, or with spirituality, whatever it might be, you have to find some grounding to that. And if not, you're just pushing an uphill battle that it's hard to win.
Yeah, I think those relationships we have are so important, can't be forgotten. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Matt?
The final thoughts that I think I would like to share is, one, just a big thank you to the doctors and the nurses and every administrative researchers. There are so many people that I think I was unaware of that are in the medical field, doing everything that they can to find solutions for cancer or the millions of other diseases out there. And I truly have so much appreciation and for everything that they've done throughout throughout the years. There are so many people out there. So my final thoughts would be just to say thank you to everyone who has sacrificed their time and their livelihood and done what they can to help people who have cancer, especially children. It is hard to see a child go through chemo and radiation and everything that they go through, but they walk into those rooms and they put smiles on their face, and they have to go home to their families every night and see their children, and they make a difference, more than I think any parent who was going through it at the time can actually express and tell them how much they appreciate. So for my doctors, I know we have some favorite doctors, but for my doctors and nurses, and for all of them out there that are really on the front line doing this, thank you. We appreciate you. Even if it's unspoken, know that love and compassion that you show us during our times of anger and doubt, everything that comes along with going through this process, we appreciate it, and you mean way more than I think you probably can recognize.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's been so wonderful talking to you today. Thanks for sharing your time.
Likewise. Thank you, Dana.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Parent and Caregiver Voices Project. Please like and subscribe to this channel for more. You can find more information about the Caregiver Wellbeing Special Interest Group and the Center for Pediatric Psychology in the links in our show notes. You can also follow the Caregiver Wellbeing account on Instagram to stay connected and get more information on parent and caregiver wellbeing. You can find us by searching at Caregiver Wellbeing SPP. Thanks to you for listening today, and a special thanks to Matt and Dana.